Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is going to be a little different than usual. Today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a roundtable discussion on the current Oceania Storm meta. We're going to be talking about forecasts, Anzac, Japan Anzac, and what ladder feels like with what the qualifier data is starting to show. Um, the format of the meta currently is developed really quick, and a lot of players, including myself, felt early on that Japan Anzac is becoming a pretty large gravitational center of the meta. Um, so we're going to take a look at some of the stats of the last tournament, and we're just going to get some overall opinions. So these are my two co-hosts. We'll start with Jking.
Hey folks, I'm Jking. You might know me from I've done casting in cards. I've played in tournaments in cards. I also occasionally stream, but you probably know me from my YouTube channel, where I talk about the game, balance, meta, tournaments, deck techs, all that fun stuff. And I'm looking forward to talking about what things are looking at the moment in Oceania Storm.
All right, thank you.
My name is Starry. I also cast occasionally, and I am a slightly less accomplished player, although I've definitely gotten my fair share of like open tournament results. And what else? I'm pretty chronically online, and you definitely know me from around Discord, although I don't usually make so much content. I kind of just share my thoughts in text format. So yeah.
All right, thank you guys. If you don't know me, I'm NonGMOSalt. I've been playing since the open beta in 2019. I was in the 2019 qualifiers. I've been playing for a long time, making anti-meta lists mostly. Um, Sometimes I have good ideas, usually they're not. But for the first topic we're going to be talking about has to be the first impressions of Oceania Storm. What did you guys expect to be strong before the release of the expansion?
That's a very difficult question to answer for me because I really wasn't following the release super closely. I was finishing up my master's, so I was kind of just like keeping the spoilers off to the side and not looking super closely at anything. However, I do remember the day that Yokosuka was spoiled. I'm like, I feel like this card is really, really good. The fact that it's like an aggro plane is pretty insane. And I don't think we had the full list of weather cards, but I'm like, even if it is just an aggro plane that sometimes can cycle and like sometimes gets a very middling weather card, whatever. Um, However, as we saw, weather is almost on rate as far as it like the card per card strength compared to other stuff. I, Maybe it's like slightly under rate, but that combined with the flexibility of it, I mean, I think that generally speaking, the cards are relatively on rate. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I when the cards were coming out, or being announced, I thought that the two decks that looked sort of the most appealing using new cards were some sort of Japan Air with Forecast, and then German Heinz. And I thought those were sort of the clear decks that were getting standout cards. It was weird predicting though, because most of the weather cards were like revealed basically right at the very end. So we didn't really have an idea of what weather was going to look like. And I have to say the latter weather cards that were revealed right at the end made weather seem a lot more appealing than the initial wave had. I think they showed off the best sunny cards and the worst storm and rain cards in the first wave of weather. So it looked like, okay, sunny aggro is going to be the thing you do with weather, but then it really turned into actually burn/control.
Are there any cards specifically you were really excited to try out?
Uh, just weather for the most part. I thought that weather looked cool. I still think weather is cool. I think that uh, I understand why a lot of people don't like it. I totally understand why there's a lot of people that are like, this is a bad mechanic and shouldn't have been added. Yeah, this is more of like a I just think this is neat kind of mechanic than I think it's like healthy for the game, right? You know, this isn't my commentary on like, you know, game design or like what should or shouldn't be in the game. I think it's cool. So
I was really looking forward to, and I'm enjoying playing with the neutral package for Britain, with running the productions, blasts, plans, and then stuff like Universal Carrier and the Essex, or whatever the 4/7's called, that increases all the neutral stuff. I think that package is just really fun. I enjoyed saving onto those
I
cards in
agree.
hand.
That's a very
Yeah.
fun. It's a very fun deck for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I think the card I was most excited for probably wasn't a release card. It wasn't part of the expansion. I was most excited for B29 being reworked into the game. I'm really glad that
Yeah, fair enough.
it's literally playable now.
Yeah, I was curious, like, if we were gonna see anything crazy. I feel like part of the reason that it wasn't in the game was because of like Flight to Oblivion, and I was curious if like we were gonna see any sort of additional cheese with Flight to Oblivion. I don't know. We'll see. It's what, a 9/9 now instead of a 12/12 or something? Or was it always a
No,
9/9?
Yeah, it
was
was
always
always a
9/9.
9/9,
Okay.
but it got the deployment deal 6 damage randomly split between all enemies, and the cost is now always 12 instead of it used to be 15, costs 12 if you have the front line.
Yeah.
The fact that it capped Blitz is absolutely insane to me. Like, if you're gonna have the cost permanently reduced and also it has a in pretty good deployment effect, it did not also need Blitz with a 9/9.
Yeah, we'll see if it ever actually sees play as it is, but
I think
yeah.
Ramp deserves the love either way. It's had a rough couple of years.
That's fair.
All right, so I
Um,
want to talk a little bit more specifically about forecast as a mechanic. I think a lot of the issues around forecast might not necessarily even be the weather cards, but the cards that forecast the text is on, like Task Force 44, Overcast, just generally really strong cards that otherwise might be a little too overtuned with forecast on them.
yeah, I mean, maybe. I think that it does feel a little bit like tacked on to some cards. Like it definitely didn't need to be tacked on to Overcast. But at the same time, like there does have to be a critical mass of cards that have the text on it to have synergies be playable, right? I mean, they did, despite the fact that none of them have landed as of yet. There are a lot of cards in the set that do benefit when you play Rain or Sun or Storm or whatever. So, like, obviously, for those cards to work, it would be hard to flush out the card pool with enough copies of the word forecast otherwise, but
Yeah, I kind of disagree that it's the cards that say forecast on them versus the weather cards themselves, because most of the cards that forecast are pretty subpar without forecast. And obviously, adding forecast to a card is one of the most powerful keywords you could add to any card. Um, but just like, I don't think Overcast is that good. If it did not have forecast, I don't think you would play it. In that nobody played it when it didn't have forecast on it.
yeah, yeah.
And then the basically all of the American cards that say forecast on them, I think, are pretty bad. And, well,
Let me look at which ones they are real quick.
There is a surprising amount of them.
Like, the duck and the kingfisher are not great if you need to forecast to win with your deck. Like, Kingfisher is fine in a certain kind of deck, because if it works, it's great, and if it doesn't work, it's fine because you're doing other stuff. But with the way forecast plays right now, it's you kind of want to forecast immediately and then pick the very specific things you're looking for. It's usually a board clear. Sometimes it's burn, depending on the situation, and then you hit your opponent with it. So you don't want to play immediately a unit that doesn't always forecast. You don't want to play any card that does not forecast immediately. So Kingfisher and Duck are bad. Overcast draws and ramps your opponent, so it's... I don't want to say it's bad, because if you're playing a ramp deck, I think there's a lot of argument to run Overcast, but it's not a card you...
Inherently dubious.
Yeah. And then US Weather Bureau is laughable. And then, like, if you look at the other cards that forecast, Walrus is, I think, a fairly balanced card, because it's expensive for a weak body, and you don't get the veteran effect until after. Cruiser Scouts for Japan, the pin. It's 2 credits pin is fairly below rate. Coast Watchers, I think, is fine, because it leaves you with a 0/6 body, and also it's a minor nation card. I think the standout cards, like, the only 2 cards that I have issues with that say forecast on them are Task Force 44 and Yokosuka, and that's because both of them are on rate. Well, Task Force is an on-rate card with an incredible effect on it, and Yokosuka is a broken card. You could remove
I 100% agree.
Intel and draw, and it would still be played in every single Japan deck. You could remove 3 out of the 4 effects of the card, and it would still be played in every deck. So yeah, I think it's more that weather turned out to be not something that you forecast 2 or 3 times a game, and you pick something very situational based on the time where you forecast, and it instead turned into you forecast as often as possible, and you always look for very specific things that you will play eventually down the line as your win condition.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's actually a really good assessment. Yeah, there's really not any cards in here that are problematic aside from like Task Force 44 and Yokosuka. You definitely there are playable cards in here. I mean, I think that Walrus is absolutely a fair card. I think Kawanishi is a fair and playable card. I think Coast Watchers is fair and playable. I even think that Duck in certain metas is totally fair and playable. I think that as right now, with the prevalence of Dingo and, shall I say, Dingo-based strategies using like Second Sunrise, the Duck is kind of bad, but I think that in a world where you're playing, where the aggro deck of choice is like, I don't know, Heinz or something a little slower, where you're not really pushing the front line immediately, or, you know, I don't know. I think that there's worlds where Duck is playable, and yeah, so yeah, it's really just those 2 cards, and the fact that the decks that are playing one are often playing the other, and so you have like 7 forecasts, and let's say that, as you said, if you're like searching for the things that are going to be your win cons, you have seven forecasts. Let's say you pick Storm for every single one, and let's say that every time you find the 6 cost, deal 5, and then 2 to adjacent units, like that's, let's say that like that's what your win con is going to be, which a lot of times it is, especially in combination with like Blitz planes. Let's say that every time you see it, which is 1 out of 3, you take it, then you're going to have on average like 2.3 of those per game, and that's 13 or what, 12 damage on average to face if you want it to be. 12 damage for basically no investment. Yeah, it's especially when the task forces are another 8 damage. That's lethal. It's lethal with very little effort.
Yeah. I mean, even Task Force, I think if none of the weather cards could deal damage to the HQ, I think Task Force 44 is a perfectly fine card being an
I agree entirely. I agree entirely.
Yeah, it's just obviously the fact that there is burn and is being played for burn in burn decks, that it should probably not hit the HQ.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear what you guys think of this. I think to me the issue with weather, from just a design perspective, if you could go back and rework the entire expansion, or at least the weather part of the expansion, I think it should not have been given to specific nations with the if you played this weather card this turn, get an extra effect cards, because none of those are particularly good and none of those are particularly interesting. Like, it's not interesting to be like, well, I'm playing an air deck and I'm running the whatever the
Japan.
yeah,
The Japan. Yeah.
out of the sun. So I pick Sunny every single time, and then I just pick the best of the 3 Sunny options. Like, that's already immediately limiting you to 1/3 of the total weather options that you would otherwise be able to do anytime you forecast. If your deck is built around always pick Sunny or always pick Rain, and if you get rid of those, I think it allows you to give every nation forecast, and then you can put it on like a special or a limited, and each nation gets one. So the most you could possibly outcast or forecast in a single deck is like, 6. If you give Anzac the standard one, and then all of the other ones get elite, special, or limited forecast, and all of the main nations only get a single forecast card, I think that just makes it better, because it limits the total amount you can forecast in a single deck, but it also allows all decks an easier time to access forecast, which also allows for more diversity, because it's not, oh, I pick Japan or Anzac because forecast is really, really good, and those are the only 2 nations that can reliably forecast. I think just going back and reworking it that way would be...
Okay. I don't disagree. I want to explore. There was a lot of information there, and I kind of want to explore some of the downstream effects of that. So one of the things you said is that it's maybe not bad design, but like questionable design to have the like if you play Rain or if you play Sun or because it like is inherently limiting. And I agree that on some hand, the fact that you're limiting yourself is almost guaranteed to like make it bad, especially if the cards are only good if you like get those effects off of them. I think if they just like tag on like and if you play Sun, the card gets like +2 defense or something, where it's like, okay, it's a completely playable card without it, but like there's like a small incentive to do it, then like sure, I think that would totally be fine. The problem is, let's take for example the US card.
Is it Special Ambush?
You know what? I don't own the card. I'm looking for it, and I don't own it. Yeah. 1/62, or like you fully repair your infantry. That is not to say that repair is like a crazy mechanic or anything, but you're repairing all of your cards, and I'm sure that if you're trying to reduce chip damage with the first effect, that you probably want to be triggering the second effect sometimes. So yeah, like the cards that do have it are at least partially like, I would say more than partially, like almost completely built around like having to play that weather card for the card to actually like do anything. And yeah, I agree. Like, okay, cards like that are not going to be good because they restrict your opportunities from what was quite varied to quite small, and so you have to balance that. You have to balance the drawback of that with the effect that you're getting out of it, and with the cards that we've seen, it doesn't seem like that is a good balance. Like, doesn't seem like it's worth the drawback. And then the other thing that you said was that you could just give like every nation one forecast card. And yeah, I mean, you could. I think that what they chose to do was give different nations very different things, and I think that it's more in line with previous design choices. If we look at like when they introduce a new mechanic like veteran, when they introduced veteran, they like gave most of the veteran synergy cards to like Germany, and then I think maybe a little bit to Russia. I might be thinking of Pin, or not Pin, Pincer. So they introduce the new mechanics, but then they like give more of the support to some of the nations, and then with other nations they find like different things for them to do. I guess my point is like, yeah, you could distribute it equally among all nations. It doesn't seem like it would be in line with their previous choices. I think giving each nation some like distinct identity is something that they seem to care about.
So I have a couple things to say. Salt, if you want to jump in, feel free.
Sure.
But I mean, with the veteran thing, Germany and Soviets got all of the veteran synergy stuff. So anything that said if you veteran do this, or US got actually trigger veteran card, but every nation got veteran cards in that set because veteran was a mechanic that most of the time you're not building around. It's just an interesting way to interact with the game. And I feel like Forecast should have been that as well, where it's an effect that, like, sure, maybe some nations get more synergy cards with weather, but every nation should have like maybe more, just some amount of access to it. It was sort of the same thing with Develop, where every nation got some Develop cards, but then other nations got more or stuff around Develop.
Yep, yeah, true.
Something else you could do with weather is, instead of having cards that say if you played a sunny card, do blank, or if you played a rainy card, do blank, you could instead have cards. You could have made it so that forecast was not a single effect, but instead you could have cards that say forecast sunny. So it only forecasts sunny cards.
I really
and
like
then you
that,
have
actually.
other cards that will say like forecast anything. So that also lets you balance forecast cards more, and then also push certain themes for certain nations more.
I really like that. I think that's a very elegant solution, actually. I'm surprised they didn't do that.
The thing about the all of the, like, if you played a rainy or if you played a sunny cards, all of them have such a crazy high opportunity cost to their central ability, because you're essentially removing what, 17 out of the 24 cards that each, the math is wrong on that, but you're
Yeah.
removing 2/3 of the weather cards from your deck that's playing explicitly weather. So it's a crazy deck building constraint that it will it's very, very hard to outlive that opportunity cost.
It's also just very weird to me that it was, if you played a weather card of this type on this turn, because most of them are just really hard to play that card and another card, and then it like affects a board state that you already needed to have established. It would have made a lot more sense if you forecast this card this turn, or if you forecast this weather type this turn, do it, because then it would just be easier to trigger and it could be more relevant. Because I think just all of the cards that say if you played blank type of weather card are just kind of bad.
Yeah, they're slow. Yeah, I mean, I think that they certainly would be more playable. They also encourage you to go for like the 2-cost ones as well. And the 2-cost ones are, for rain, are like kind of okay depending on what the archetype is. For storm are pretty good. For sun are pretty bad. And so like, it definitely means that like there are some of those weather synergies that are able to get played, at least in theory. Like, for example, as I said, the US one I think is like theoretically playable, maybe not like in a competitive deck, but I wouldn't be surprised if I ran into it on ladder. Whereas the Sun one for Japan, I don't think I'm ever gonna see that. Like, I don't see a world where I'm ever gonna see this card on the field.
I think that one's the most playable to me, the Japan one, just because, not currently, because currently there's just like not the air cards to really support that deck. But like if they get enough air units, I think Sunny is the one that has the most sort of conclusive theme for one archetype as aggro. And I think the 2-cost options are what you're picking 99% of the time anyways with Sunny, because the other ones are either bad with 0 synergy or really expensive. That's just like the one where it's like has the most immediate effect. It's cheap. The other one that I think is fine is the Anzac one, the Veterans. I mean, the issue with that one is you have to play 2 weather cards to actually do anything with it, which means it has to survive several turns. But a 4-credit 4/8 that buffs everything +2/+2 is pretty good. But again, competitive, not really. You can't expect a card to survive several turns.
Mhm.
All right, now I think it's high time we address the elephant in the room and talk about Dingo.
Dingo is one of my favorite cards of the set. It's one of my favorite cards ever. And this is not tied to how powerful it is. I just think it's a really interesting design. Cards hasn't really done anything... Like, Cards has had 0 attack units before. Obviously, like the 0 Force Revelation or Skytrain, I think is another example of a unit that is more than just simply meant for trading. But I think Dingo is really interesting because of just how multifaceted it is. You could run it for the healing, you can run it for the cycle if you're trying to get through your deck, you can run it because it's a 1-cost blitz tank. It's really good in Heinz if you're running other stuff to buff your tanks. I think it's just really multifaceted and an interesting card. And just to pat myself on the back a little bit, I did call that this is going to be one of the best cards of the set, like as soon as
Oh
it was
yeah, no.
announced.
The minute that you see it, you're like,
Yeah.
this card is absolutely busted. Yeah.
There were so many people being like, "What? But why would I want to play this card?" And like, what if you go second?
Oh, really? I didn't see. See, that's funny. I didn't see anybody say anything like that. At least in my circles, I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I
Looks
think it's one
really
of those cards
strong.
where
Yeah.
if you have experience playing a lot of card games or playing card games for a long time, or you have experience in the competitive scene, it's something that you immediately go like, "Oh, this is really, really powerful." But if you're somebody who plays cards more casually, or cards is your first card game, I think it's much easier to just be like, "Well, it's 0 attack, and it needs to be able to hit the HQ. So if there's a guard or they have the front line, it's just a dead card in hand." And how good is cycling anyways if they just kill it on the next turn? But yeah, no, Dingo is a very powerful card. I'm very curious. Do you guys think, 1, does it need to be nerfed? And 2, if it does need to be nerfed, how would you nerf it?
I can answer the second one extremely easily. Do I think it needs to be nerfed? Potentially, but only after really seeing how the meta, what's happening in the meta, because I think some really interesting things are happening in the meta. How would I nerf it? Remove Blitz. I think it's like really simple. I think that removing Blitz would like seriously hurt the card. But that's what I would do. I don't know. What would you do?
Do you have any thoughts, Salt?
I'm thinking real hard. I think they should just remove it from the game. I think it's too strong of a card.
Okay.
I feel like if you took one part of it away, it would be completely useless. But if you didn't, it's just gonna sit there being absurdly good.
I think if you remove Blitz, you have to give it Smokescreen. I think just
Yeah, no, that's
playing it
fine.
as a
That's totally fine.
targetable thing that needs to survive a turn is far too weak. I am personally of the opinion, and this is going to be fun because of what Salt just said, I'm of the opinion that I don't think it needs to change. At the very least, not now.
I agree. I agree with not now. I think that potentially later, but for now, I want to see how
It's
I
not
want to
one
see.
of 6 emergency nerf.
Yeah.
My reasoning for why I don't think it needs a nerf now is there's a couple parts to it. One, I think the big pusher for why every deck right now is an Anzac deck is not Dingo,
I
but
agree.
it's Forecast. And I think Forecast clearly needs a nerf, and I think Forecast is clearly going to get a nerf. And once Forecast is nerfed, or I should say weather cards are nerfed, I think Anzac is going to drop off a lot. Not disappear entirely, because there's things you want to do with Anzac, but I think Anzac's going to drop off a lot, and therefore we're going to see a lot less Dingos. I think Dingo is just, like, right now, it's very clearly 4 cards that you throw into an Anzac deck because you can't run 12 forecast cards. The other thing that I think is fine with it is it's an Ally Nation card for the newest Ally Nation added to the game. So it's going to need good cards to be relevant and you want people to play it. And to me, Dingo is one of those cards where, on paper, it is broken. It's like better than anything you can compare it to. But I think it's one of those things that you just accept that it's like that, and accept that that powerful card is just part of that nation's identity. I feel like there's a few things that we just sort of accept as like, okay, this is just like Blitzkrieg, for example, is like absolutely insane if you compare it to anything else. Like if you just showed people cards as cards in a vacuum and you told them Blitzkrieg was in the classic set and never nerfed, they would find that crazy. But we just accept that Blitzkrieg is a card in the game because it's Germany's thing. And for the end of time, Germany will have decks that want to take the front line and play Blitzkrieg and win, and I think it's fine for there to be, until the end of time, Anzac decks that want to play Dingo and Cycle.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess my thoughts on it are, like you said, you need strong cards, especially at the beginning, because I don't know if you remember back to Winter War, but like I obviously vividly remember casting that World Championships because it was the last one in Iceland, and I remember that like, and you were there, I think you got second, or no, you got first, you won that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and what was I gonna say? Finland kind of just flopped. Like Finland was almost good enough, but like in a way that was kind of tempting, but didn't have the, I don't know, just didn't have the oomph that it really needed to draw people to it. And I'm, from a game design standpoint, I'm trying to get people to like play this archetype or play this set, invest in the set. Obviously, it needs to be a little bit more powerful than that. I think that they overshot maybe a tiny bit. But yeah, you don't know like beforehand what it's going to look like, other than from what your testers tell you. I think Dingo is completely fine for the moment. Some of the reasons that I think that are that it isn't seeing play in every Anzac deck. It could see play in most Anzac decks, but that doesn't mean that it's like actually good or synergistic. A lot of times it is just like cycle sometimes, like you have to wait until you have an opening and then you play it and then it dies the next turn. Like, I don't know. And I think that it gives people a reason to play cards to the board, which I think is healthy for the game. I think that within the past 6 months to a year, maybe longer term than that, but especially in the past 6 months to a year, playing from the hand is becoming more and more of the way the game is played. And I think that this card sort of in the background encourages you to have guard units, to have units in the front line. So that's always good. And then lastly is I see serious meta changes happening because of Japan Anzac. I'm sure we'll get into it more later. I don't think Japan Anzac aggro is nearly as strong as it was like this time last week. I think that there's a lot of innovation going on, and I think that innovation being guards and board clears and playing stuff early and just all of the ways in that it's hurting that deck really especially hurt Dingo. So I don't know. I think Dingo is definitely fine for now. I think that we can reassess in the future, but as of right now, I'm totally okay with it.
That sounds like a perfect segue into Japan Anzac itself, and more specifically where the meta is headed right now. Because for the past week and a half, maybe 4 days out since the expansion, it's been just hordes of Japan Anzac. Everywhere you look, you're playing against, or you are playing Japan Anzac. So I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say about what you think, where you think the meta is going right now, and what your assumptions are at the end of the season, or until the next balance change.
I think in terms of the meta on ladder and in Iron tournaments to a lesser extent, I think it's still going to be Japan ANZAC dominated. I think the play rate is going to drop because people have realized that it is not clearly the best deck in the game. Like, it's not an S tier deck that has no counters and it's just play Japan ANZAC or lose. There's very easy ways to counter it with a variety of different decks. But there's two decks that people on ladder will always be drawn to, and that is whatever the best aggro deck is and ramp, regardless of how good ramp is. And those two things work in a way that makes the aggro deck always have a good enough win rate on ladder, because the aggro deck will always beat the ramp deck 100% of the time.
And has at least a 50% in mirrors as well, which is like the other big thing, especially if you're a good player, right?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we can get into a bit later when talking about Japan ANZAC, but I think it has a fairly high skill cap right now, which is allowing the people who are grinding ladder to eke out like 75, 80% win rate in the mirrors, which is why I bet I know for a fact some of them are, but I would imagine the vast majority of people right now who are at the 2950, they'll probably hit 3K by the time this video comes out on ladder, are playing Japan ANZAC, and that's just because it's an aggro deck. And aggro is just going to have faster games, and that's why people play it on ladder. I think in tournament, it's a very different question because, one, you're playing against exclusively high-skilled players, and two, high-skilled players are willing to play slow decks in tournaments if the slow deck has a better win rate than the faster deck. And Japan ANZAC, I think, gets absolutely destroyed by a number of different slow decks that people might not have the patience to play on ladder, but in tournament are going to perform very, very well. So I would be very surprised if people are banning Japan ANZAC in the tournament next week. I think most players are going to have it, but I would be very surprised if it gets banned by anybody. I think if anybody bans it, it's a mistake.
I agree, yeah. I think that Japan ANZAC mid to late last week was obviously a clear favorite. But right around that time, I played a series of like 10 games where 7 of them were against people that were in like top 30. And 4 of the 5 were not on Japan ANZAC. Some of these people were in like top 10, and I'm like, okay. So clearly they're able to achieve very good things with non-Japan ANZAC. And the deck that I saw most frequently that wasn't Japan ANZAC was Britain ANZAC. Part of it was some of them were more meteor focused, as in like drawing through your deck ASAP with meteor as the win con, because as you're drawing through your deck, you also are drawing into your forward observers and your all your other good anti-aggro stuff. So that's part of it. Some of the lists, in fact, what last week I actually preferred. I actually preferred the lists that were less focused on drawing through your deck and just more anti-aggro-y. Some of them were playing like, as you were saying, the Britain neutral package with the plans and stuff like that. Some of them were not. I tested both. I was not super happy with the neutral package last week. I've tested it this week, or like yesterday and today, and I'm much more happy with it now. As some developments have been made. But I'm most free. It's funny that you say that Japan ANZAC is rampant on ladder. That has not been my case at all. I would say at least 40% of my games are against Britain ANZAC. I see Britain ANZAC more frequently than I see Japan ANZAC. I think that Japan ANZAC aggro gets bodied by Britain ANZAC if you set it up correctly, although obviously setting it up to beat Japan ANZAC means that you shave off percentage points against other decks. I think that it is weak to Japan ANZAC control, which I really like. I personally, I don't necessarily think it's the best deck, but I think, as you said, I think Japan ANZAC in any variant has high skill cap because of its flexibility, and it rewards good planning with forecasts and just good card management. I think it's really, really easy to win mirrors if you're a strong player. I think so. Yeah, I think that the aggro variants are relatively well countered by both Britain Anzac and control variants of Japan Anzac. And on top of that, then you also have these like Russia lists that either have I oh my gosh, I remember last week I was seeing Russia lists Russia Japan with 4 copies of Island Defense, and I was seeing that probably 1 to 2 out of every 10 games, like probably about 15-ish% of the meta.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, somebody really wants to win this matchup. So yeah, you have like the Russia anti-aggro lists, which I think are weak to the Britain lists, which is why Britain seems to have kind of taken over since last week. But last week, that was like the big anti-Japan Anzac deck of choice was the Russia Japan with 4 island defenses. I think that once people caught on with Britain to the 1 cost infantry, both Russia and Britain have insane 1 cost infantries that add 2 cards to your hand, and they're both relatively similar cards. And once people figured out that those cards exist and are quite good, I think that both of them really, really hurt any sort of aggressive deck. And so what I've been seeing is a huge lean towards control. Especially control with inevitability, and the deck that has the most inevitability is probably the deck that plays Meteor. So I don't know what you think about that, Jking, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, so on ladder, I'm still seeing, maybe it's because my ladder MMR is really low because I've not been playing much ladder for the last like 2 years. On ladder, I see all sorts of random stuff. I'm like 2,400, so I'm not playing against the top 10 people at the moment. But I've been playing a lot of iron tournaments. And in iron tournaments, like 4 or 5 days ago, it was wall-to-wall Japan Anzac. Like, at one point I played, I think I played 5 iron tournaments. I got to the finals of all 5, so I played 15 games in iron tournaments, and it was 13 with Japan Anzac. It was just, like, the only thing you saw. But then yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever the last iron tournament was open, it was like 80% Britain Anzac. Like, it just completely flipped on a coin, or flipped on its head. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me, because when I was playing against the Japan Anzacs, I had a 95% win rate against it with Britain Anzac.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I think the meta right now is the popular decks, I think, are Japan Anzac. And these are in terms of like at the competitive end. Like, these are the decks I expect to see in the tournament this week. Is Britain Anzac, I think, is the best deck in the game right now, and that's the deck I expect everybody to ban.
I agree.
I think after that, there's Japan Anzac and there's Soviet Japan. I don't think Soviet Japan calling it just anti-aggro is giving it, like, I feel like that's a bit too harsh. Well, maybe there's people out there who are just playing like a full anti-aggro version of it. But the Soviet Japan that I've been seeing, I would just call it control. Like, they've got front formation, they've got the key, the 6-cost key with the destruction effect that Japan has. It's able to put out some burst, it's able to just play all the Soviet board clears, all the Soviet big elites, and then it just has the early game, and the 4 island defenses do not die to burn and not get rolled over by Aggro. So to me, I think the tournament's just going to be you ban Britain Anzac, and then you play it out with your Soviet Japan control and your Japan Anzac control. My thought is anyone going to be bold enough to bring like a US Anzac ramp deck with air defense and counteroffensive, where you try to target Britain Anzac and also target like Soviet Japan by just going heavier and running countermeasures to stop Meteor? And then you ban it. Like, maybe people are gonna like try to anti-strat for that. We'll see if the meta develops in that direction. But right now, for tournaments, I think it's that very, very control focused. And on ladder, I think people are still just going to be playing a lot of Japan Anzac because it has a high skill cap, but it also has a pretty low floor in terms of getting into it. You just pick Storm, you pick the cards that go face, you point them at the face, you win the game some of the time. I think that's still going to be very popular on ladder until it gets nerfed inevitably.
I agree, and I don't think that that's like necessarily a bad thing, especially if there's like very clear counters. I think that having like a Migo face deck, you know, click the little deal 2 damage to the opponent every turn.
Yeah.
You know, Like, I think having that isn't necessarily a bad thing for the game. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of counterplay that is not only already in existence, but is definitely actively being developed. Something that I've seen to of course, whenever you have a new meta and there is counterplay, you're gonna see people coming up with these new developments to counter whatever they perceive to be the best deck. And right now, a lot of people perceive Brit and Anzac to be the best deck, and a lot of people are playing things specifically to counter it. What I have been seeing a lot of, maybe not a lot of, but enough of that I uh, am a little bit surprised by it is Soviet France guard tribal with sabotages. So basically, like that, you can never play the meteor because there's always like big guards, and then you're playing sabotages so that eventually you can get rid of the meteor, or at least have an okay shot at getting rid of the meteor. And I don't know. I think that Brit and Anzac could probably adapt to not have as much of a problem into those. I think that you can adapt the deck to do different things, but the variants that I have seen being successful, I think, do have a little bit of a hard time against it. The other card that they have that's really strong into Brit and Anzac is KV1 1936 or 1939 or whatever it is. And I have been on the receiving end of having an entire board converted into KV1 1936s. So I think that, again, it's really easy for that deck to play like NCSs if they want to play NCSs, or play cards that are able to deal with these, but they do kind of have to pick and choose which things they want to be resilient against. Which decks the Brit and Anzac list wants to be resilient against. And I think to some extent that's true with every deck, and I think that it's true with the Japan Anzac aggro as well. I think that you can build it to be resilient against some things, but obviously not against everything. So thus is the nature of card games.
Yeah. I think I haven't seen this, but someone in my Discord mentioned this, and now it frightens me. They said the 169th, the German elite that discards a card whenever you play an order, hard counters Britain Anzac, and that is so true, because Britain does not have a single card that answers that, and your deck is like 90% order.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see what people will come up with, but I don't think that Japan Anzac is the threat that it was last week, and I think that next week, Japan Anzac and Britain Anzac and some other decks will all be viable, and I don't think that there's going to be a clear winner. That's kind of like my prediction. Is that I feel like things are going to balance themselves out.
I do wonder if Meteor needs to be nerfed in the same balance patch that they nerf Weather. Because I just assume that they're going to have a balance patch where they nerf the Weather burn cards, because that's very clearly warping the meta. Because I think if you nerf Weather a lot, I think Japan Anzac is going to drop drastically in the power levels, and the aggressive version will just run less forecast and move more into just unit stuff. I actually think right now a deck a lot of people are sleeping on in terms of aggro is Japan Poland with Anders Army, and you just focus on playing cheap units and just playing very traditional aggro rather than going for this forecast stuff. But to me, the issue with Britain Anzac is if you can remove every single card that says forecast in that deck, and I don't think the deck's power level drops substantially at all. So my worry is if you nerf Weather, Japan Anzac drops off the face of the earth, does the meta just become Britain Anzac Meteor decks versus people whose decks are entirely built around hard countering it? And that does not sound like a fun meta. So, but I'm tossing that question out to you guys. Do you think
I agree?
Preemptive nerf?
I think that there are cards in the Meteor deck that need potential nerfs. I think the card Meteor itself is kind of hard to nerf effectively because it could cost 6 and it wouldn't really matter. Like that isn't. It could. I don't know how you would even nerf the card itself. It's almost like the concept that needs to be dealt with,
Yeah,
and I think
smokescreen.
that
I mean,
that makes it really, really bad.
I do think increasing the cost is a substantial change. Like it doesn't change the way the deck works, but it does slow down the deck a lot.
Sure.
And I do think that the power of Anzac, Britain Anzac right now is you're just able to do stuff so efficiently, and getting Meteor out of your hand to play around stuff like discard or sabotage
That's true.
is not expensive at all. You can easily grow your Meteor in those first couple times you have to play it before it actually does anything, while still clearing the board or cycling and doing like a big draw turn. So I think if you make it like cost even 4, I think at 4 it would probably still be a very, very powerful deck. But if you make it cost 5 or 6, I think its power level would fall off a cliff. But
That's a good
obviously, doubling the cost of a card that you just released would be insane. But I don't know. Do we think it needs that level of nerf right now?
Again, I would rather see some of the other cards be nerfed. I wouldn't mind seeing like Middlesex Regiment being a 1/2. I don't know if that I'm not even all of the variants of that deck play Middlesex Regiment. This is almost like my own personal beef with Middlesex Regiment. I hate that card. I think
Yeah.
it's really dumb because it's either absurdly busted or like kind of useless, and there's never an in between. And I absolutely hate that card. What else? I think that the 1K 1/1 is probably the easiest target for a nerf. The British
yeah.
infantry. Because I think that is almost like the core of your deck, especially if you're playing the neutral package. That's the card that makes all the neutral cards. So like, if that one gets nerfed, obviously the whole new neutral package gets a lot worse. You could nerf the transport or convoy, the credit that made
The
Commando
protected.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do something with that. I don't know. There's a couple targets. But...
I do see the issue with nerfing Meteor. I don't know if this was intentional from the design of the set or not, but I think the issue with the neutral package, if you nerf Meteor into the dirt, is it just doesn't do anything. Like the neutral package gives you slightly efficient removal for anti-aggro. It lets you draw through your deck slightly effective, and it makes you get like a slight tempo advantage with productions. And like the Sussex or Wessex or whichever one it is, that helps you do all of those things slightly better. But all of it leads to end with a win condition. And Britain has historically lacked win conditions. Like, it's funny to say that with Commonwealth being like the most win condition card in the game, just most explicit, but like it's kind of Britain when compared to other nations like Germany, where they had Comet, they currently have Salamander. Soviets have Front Formation. US, you can pack so full of stupidly high cost cards that you just eventually roll over your opponent. The new Japanese research is like effectively a single card win condition. Britain just lacks that. Meteor is the only win condition Britain has had since consistent win condition for a control deck since Commonwealth. And even Commonwealth was like only half a win condition, because if your opponent played like a single healing card, suddenly it doesn't do anything unless you're able to get that additional damage.
Yeah, I mean,
so yeah, if you nerf Meteor, you just delete British control from the game and all of the cards you released for it. And that's kind of an issue.
Yeah, it's almost my gripe with Britain as a whole is that they have like they're like so prone and so primed to be about making cheese decks, because they have these like really efficient draw and heal engines, and good board wipes, and sometimes okay removal, and all of these things that like a cheese deck needs, and then they just sometimes are really bad because there isn't anything to abuse. And then sometimes they're really absurdly good because there is that thing to abuse, and it, so I don't like So it's one of my gripes with cards design, is that I don't like the state of Britain. I haven't liked the state of Britain in a long time. I think that it really needs some sort of proactive strategy. I get that like part of its identity is for it to not have access to as much productivity as the other nations, but it just seems so primed to be cheesed.
Yeah, I think going back to like a very long time ago to theaters of war, Britain win condition in classic set was Commonwealth, and then in theaters of war they got Rule Britannia, and for a brief window that was like an actual win condition. You get a big board of high health units, you keep buffing the health, and then you play Rule Britannia and you hit your opponent. And then in the very next set they released To the Last Man, which it's an elite. It's for one nation that at that time did not have a control identity whatsoever, but they added that, and then obviously Leopold's always been in the game, but basically just ever since then, Britain has continuously gotten cards that kind of support the idea of just slowly building a board that is low in attack, high in defense, and slowly gathering board control over a very long period of time and eventually converting that into a win. But at the same time, they just start to give every single nation multiple ways to fully clear the board multiple times a game. And it's if your entire like win condition is built around building a single board that is resilient, how do you have that exist in a game where everybody's clearing the board all of the time? And the answer is you don't. Like that just doesn't work. So the other thing from a design perspective is maybe they could make win conditions not elites, like make more win conditions that aren't elites, because like I don't know, if you could run front formation in Britain, it would be a very interesting situation. Maybe like that's just throwing that out there as an idea, but obviously the way front formation works, it makes sense that it's an elite, but it's just it sucks that you can't run cards that are allow win conditions for other control decks in Britain because they're always elites, and then the specials tend to just be like, oh, it's a big unit, but big unit does not win you the game against control, because they play removal and they play healing and they heal up the blitz that your thing hit them with, and then they remove the thing you hit them with, and then it's gone. It's not a win condition. So yeah, I don't know, just waxing poetic on the state of Britain.
I wanted to ask you guys about some of the other archetypes that are kind of floating around right now in sort of their own little off-meta space. We touched on ramp a little bit, but there are a couple of archetypes that either came back or got introduced, like the operation cost deck and the tokens. Tokens got added back in. And I wanted to kind of ask your opinions on where those decks are kind of going right now and why they really aren't amazing in this meta right now.
I think weather just absolutely bodies them. I think that the cyclone that says every unit deals damage equal to its own attack to itself, in combination with the cyclone that says deal 2 damage to every unit, in combination with the cyclone that says deal 3 damage, then 2 damage, then 1 damage, in combination with the cyclone that says deal 5 damage to a random enemy, makes it really hard to establish long-term boards, and I think that both of those decks require establishing boards over several turns, or at least like they are not based on blitz. They're based on accumulation of resources, and I don't think accumulation of resources, especially go wide decks, is really playable into forecast.
I don't think there's been a worse time to be playing a go wide deck since SSCD. This is there's so many board clears, and the one that bothers me the most, and this is so minuscule, but it frustrates me to no end, that one of the 2-cost options for weather, 2-cost card, it should be fairly fine. 2-cost, retreat a unit. Fair enough. That's like a balanced option that's perfectly fine. And then they just threw on, for the fun of it, and all units with the same name, and they released that in the same set as trying to bring back tokens. Like, you introduced a 2-credit card and then said, also screw tokens almost exclusively? Like, what?
And why don't, hold up. And why don't we put Why don't we put forecast into the nation that already has a card that says destroy target small card and all of the other ones with the same name? So why don't they just be able to like stack that effect as many times as they want? Yeah.
Yeah. Tokens is unbelievably like your tokens right now would be like fine in like 2020 cards or
I agree.
2021 cards. But this is 2026 cards, and tokens did not get given anything that resembles 2026 cards power level in terms of what other archetypes and nations are getting. It got cards that were balanced like 6 years ago, and are absolutely abysmal right now. Like
I was gonna say like the 4-cost make 3 tokens with +1/+1 or blitz, like that would have been fine in like Winter War era tokens. I remember tokens was good in Winter War era, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a very brief moment where line of engagement was like a giga broken.
Yeah,
People were playing tokens. And also you could give your tokens Alpine was a big part of that.
Oh right, yeah.
But yeah, the one card that tokens have is the third Morskoy Pikati. I'm probably butchering that. It's the 1 credit Soviet guy that summons a light infantry and gives you a blast. That card is giga broken. Like that's like probably a top 3 card in terms of power level of the set. It's just tokens is bad, but obviously you just throw it in Soviet control and that's fine. That card is so insane. It's better than the Commando. I don't understand why it summons the light infantry. Why doesn't it add the light infantry to your hand? Like,
well, because it's replacing the 1 unit that they took out, the 1/2 that added a.
Oh yeah,
All the more reason that I don't think Dingo needs a nerf. Like, there's so many cards that just body Dingo. But
the fact that the third Morskoy, which is just like an insane card, came out in the same set for the same nation as a regular Recruits. Like, a regular Recruits is just like, it looks like a nerfed into the dirt version of third Morskoy. So for people who don't know the names of these cards offhand, third Morskoy, it's a 1 credit 1/1 deployment. Add a light infantry to your support line and a blast to your hand. So you get a blast guaranteed that costs 0 and can be played immediately, and you summon the light infantry on the board immediately. So you get 2 bodies and a blast to play for all with the single credit you spent on this. A regular Recruits is a 1 credit order. Add a random combination of 2 light infantry and or blast to your hand. So you either get 2 blasts you can play immediately, or you get 1 blast you can play immediately and a light infantry in your hand, which is already a credit and a body worse than Morskoy.
Yes.
Or you get 2 light infantry in your hand, which is now like 2 credits worse than Morskoy, and you also don't get the blast.
Yeah, the only upside is that one of the bodies is named light infantry and doesn't have an operation cost. But yeah, functionally it's like so much worse, yeah.
Like if a regular Recruits summoned the light infantry or added blast to your hand, it would still probably be worse than Morskoy because you don't always get the blast. But like, at least it would be comparable.
Make it 3. Make it 3, add 3 at random, and now maybe we're talking, but as is, it's totally unplayable.
Yeah. And so we talked a lot about tokens. You also asked us about operation cost. I said from like the second they started revealing that the operation cost stuff just never looked good to me.
No.
Yeah. It's like you just play Heinz and you play the cards that are just good on their own in Heinz, and the cards that aren't good on their own you don't play.
Yeah, if we learned one lesson from Heinz in the past like 3 years, it's that operation costs are terrible. Operation costs are like, okay, so operation costs are one of the things that make cards a very unique game, and one of the things that draw me to it in the first place. Because like when the game was first coming out, basically everything had an operation cost. It was very cool. It made it so you actually had these like key decisions between, am I going to operate my units or am I not? And at this point, like, you can't be playing operation costs if you're in aggro deck. Like, it's absolutely like are you serious? Paying an operation cost in an aggro deck? So on one hand, you're you can either develop these units, you can either like develop your board and get these things that start doing buffs, or you can spend the credits on actually like doing your things, but you can't do both. And the fact that you can't do both, it's almost like a worse problem than having Heinz without Lota. Like a card that I point to in Heinz as being really, really slow and not feeling very good until very, very late in the game would be like Panzer 3H. Is that the one? Or Panzer 3F maybe? Panzer 3, it's either F or H. The Blitz one that pumps all your other tanks by 1. Just the fact that it has like 2 operation costs makes that card so much weaker than any card that has 1 or 0 operation cost. And I think that you are creating a mechanic that is inherently at odds with like what you're trying to do. It just, I don't know, something about it felt like it was doomed from the start.
Yeah, there are 3 cards from that entire archetype that Germany got basically across all the German cards that I really, really like from this set. And that is Katzman, the 2-cost 0 operation 2/3 blitz, and that's because it has 0 operation and blitz. The Landwehr Elite, because that says when your German units operate, and that counts operating for free. And the third one I'd like is the 3rd Panzer Grenadier, the 3/3 blitz that gets +1/+1 whenever a German unit operates, because again, it says operates, not spends credits operating. So it works with things that operate for free. Blue Legion's like a powerful card, but it only works if you're spending credits to operate, and that is something you historically never do in a good German deck. Or if you are doing it, it's with a single unit that's very powerful and not with a board of units. Like, the entire thing is built around having a board of units that have operation cost and then operating them frequently. And like, this is just a Disneyland world where you have 20 credits each turn and your opponent never plays a board clear. Like, it doesn't work, and it never was going to work, and there's no amount of buffing these cards that are going to make it work.
No, we found out a long time ago that like, okay, so let's say in a Germany US Heinz list that at one point was okay because you would spend 1 credit to play a tank and then 1 credit to move it up. And eventually that rate became like too bad. Like spending 2 credits, only 1 at the beginning and 1 later to move it up. And then you never have to pay a credit again because after that you're just blitzkrieging. That was too bad. Like we eventually hit a point where the rate of paying 2 credits to have a tank in the front line, like a 1/3 tank in the front line, was not good enough. And that the only way for that strategy to be playable was to pay 1 credit for like a 1/3 tank, which to be in the front line, which is like kind of crazy to think about, but that's just the truth. And so I don't know.
I actually, this is a bit broad, but I do think that the issue came less with more units having 0, going from 1 to 0 operation cost in terms of just like the power level of new cards coming out, and more with the difference of control cards going from 2 to 1 operation. Because before, a lot of like mid-rangey cards you would play in a mid-range or control deck that would sit in the support line, they'd have enough attack to attack into like a 1/3 tank that Heinz put in the front line, but it would cost 2 credits to operate, and that would throw off your curve entirely. But since just the way the power creep has worked, all of those cards now have 1 operation cost. It's very, very rare to see a card with 2 operation cost anymore, especially on an infantry. And yeah, now there's just operate for 1, so it's easier to just crush anything that you threw in the support line, so you don't want to throw it into the support line unless it's operating for free, so you don't have any tempo loss for pushing it to into the front line. Or if you're doing it on like a blitzkrieg turn where they attack immediately for lots of damage. It was never going to work. I think Heinz is a really good deck right now that a lot of people are sleeping on, but it's running none of the spending credits to operate package because you don't want to spend credits to operate.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, I mean, in the tournament, I think there were several people this weekend who brought Germany, Finland. I think it was actually like maybe the third or fourth most popular deck. So I definitely think you're onto that, despite the fact that I don't think I've seen it more than once on ladder over the past week, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I think that especially when you have to pick 3 decks, like it's definitely up there.
I
Definitely
actually
pretty
think
solid.
German Anzac Heinz is.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
I haven't played German Finland. I'm sure it's good. Lotus 5 is never going to be Heinz,
yeah.
but I haven't played a lot of German Anzac Heinz. I think that's pretty good.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I haven't really even considered it, and I haven't seen it, so I haven't had any reason to consider it. But yeah, I think that's definitely worth exploring.
Dingo and Heinz is
Dingo and
obviously.
Heinz seems really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
What we touched on it a little bit. Traditionally the counter to these really greedy control decks, like the British Meteor and the Sabotage Soviet deck list. Traditionally, the counter has been a greedier control deck, i.e., ramp. How has ramp been doing recently, given that it's had a little bit of a buff with B29 and Pershing and a couple of its other Timmy tools and Enzans from Anzac?
So I almost have to treat this as 2 different questions. How is ramp doing? Well, how is a ramp list that would even be capable of playing Pershing and B29, therefore being US major? Terribly. I don't think that US ramp is anywhere near playable right now, but I think Enzans is insane to give to a lot of nations. I mean, a lot of nations love to be playing like a secondary nation with ramp, and Anzac already has so many great tools. You also have like Anzac Spirit, which is a crazy card. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of control lists that love the fact that they can be playing Enzans and Anzac Spirit, but yeah, I don't think US is good right now.
Yeah. I'm definitely on the same page. I think the issue right now is you have time to sit back and do this meteor stuff, but you have time because they have very, very efficient healing. Because there is absolutely you are going to take 20 damage by like turn 7. It's just if you're playing Britain Anzac, you've also like healed 20 by turn 7, so you're still at 20 health. But if you're playing US, you need to get healing from somewhere because you're not getting it from your main nation at all. And you can do US Anzac ramp, and you get a small amount of healing, but a lot of it's conditional. That's not easy to condition for. Or you do Japan ally with island defense. That's less conditional. That's very, very powerful. But then you're Japan ally and not Anzac ally or Britain, so you're getting less guards, you're getting less clears. And then you can do Britain, the classic one, but then it's just sort of an issue of, well, then you're getting access to basically no forecast, which is the most effective way to get clears at the moment. So I just think it's the same issue that US has always had with ramp, which is why would you ever do it in US main? What is US offering? Because right now US offers, well, the thing US has always offered is you get to run the 12 best ramping cards that US has, and then you get to run any other US card you want. Because if you're playing like a German US or a Britain US, you only get to run the ramp cards because that's filling up your US slots. And the issue that US ramp has always had is there is no cards you would want to play in US main that are better. It would give you a better reason to pick US over anything else. Like that's the reason ramp decks have always been not US main, is because you're like, I get to run the good cards from other nations with American ramp. There's no reason to say I want to run the American cards with American ramp because the American cards are bad.
Yeah, in addition to that, I think that Anzac is not necessarily a good ally for US ramp. I mean, I think that you could make an argument that cards like Anzac Spirit and NZS are justifiable in using Anzac, but like if you have all of the best ramp cards, getting Enzance and you don't need more ramp than what US already gives you, and US already gives you kind of like the best ramp. What else was I gonna say? I think that regardless, so Jking, you said that you think that the reason is efficient healing.
Among other things.
I would argue, yeah, I would argue that with the addition of Anzac, like, I don't know, I think that US can absolutely get efficient healing from a variety of sources. Now that Japan has consistent healing, now that Anzac has efficient healing, Britain has efficient healing, Italy, France, like, there's so many nations that give US access to efficient healing. A bigger issue in my mind is making strong turn 1 plays. Especially with like Dingo, because what I've noticed is that if you're a control deck that wants to play War Machine on turn 2, that letting a Dingo do its thing gives them enough resources that, like, even if you board wipe once, maybe even twice, they just like never run out of cards, especially with like the forecast stuff. So I think that, give me one more second and I'll let you jump in. I think that if US had a strong turn 1 play that is not only good in the early game at stopping like a Dingo or a 15th Cavalry or something like that, but also continued to be effective late game, the equivalent that I'm thinking of would be a card like Morskoi, or the one credit Britain infantry, or the Japanese 1/2 that gets +2 in shock as long as it hasn't attacked yet. Those are like the things that instantly come to mind. Is like, this card's really good early, it's also really good late, it's great at stopping anti-aggro. If US had something like that instead of Duck, I think that you could make a much stronger argument for US.
I mean,
Yeah.
hypothetically, US does have Choco Boys still in, although they're really slow comparatively to the meta right now. And they also have that the 1/2 Bond Blitz infantry.
Yeah.
So they don't have nothing, but it's not ideal.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is so I said the big issue is healing, among other things. It's the among other things that it's with
Yeah.
US, it's like when you pick Britain, you're like, okay, Britain has great healing, it has great clears, it has great draw. What do you need? You need a win condition, and that's German with discard stuff and takes up the draw denial stuff, or maybe it's US and you pick ramp and then you get to put in more large units than you would otherwise into a normal deck. Or maybe it's some sort of combo, or right now with meteors, like the big thing, or you look at Germany, and like Germany has really efficient removal. It has really good late game threats. It has some clears now. What it needs is draw and heal. If you look at Japan, Japan has heal, Japan has draw, Japan has clears, but what it needs is sort of good, powerful units in the late game. Or ramp to get you there. If you look at US, what does US need? US needs healing, it also needs draw, it also needs board clears, it also needs early game, and it also needs ways to avoid taking damage directly to your HQ. It does not have guards, it doesn't have clear, it doesn't have draw, it doesn't have healing, it doesn't have early game. It literally just has ramp and big units. And, like, yeah, that's great if you're a Timmy. If you're trying to actually win a game of competitive cards, you need everything from all of the other ally nations. There's no single ally nation that's really going to offer you all of that at once. Like, the closest thing is Britain that can offer healing, clear, and guards. But, like, that's the closest you're going to get it, but none of that's, like, as efficient as you would want it to be. Yeah.
Yeah, so the way that US has historically solved this problem is just play an archetype that doesn't actually need any of those things. Instead, it just needs on rate or better units, and that's why Frontline was like just a totally fine tier 1 to 2 deck for like literally the entire existence of cards. And then it just never got supported, like, at all. Like,
we kept getting units with operation cost, where other nations kept getting units without operation cost.
Yes, exactly. And so obviously they just recently got, the 1/2 in the spring supplementary set, the 1/2 Blitz Bond. And that card's good. And we've seen some US Anzac aggro lists that are very high rolly. And, I think that there is hope, but that is hope in the future, not hope right now. Like, I think that there need to be more tools like that if US actually hopes to compete in the aggro sphere. And yeah, obviously, like if their identity is only around ramp and none of the other things, then like that really, really hurts it as a primary nation. In the same way that Russia's identity is all around its elites, and therefore it is almost impossible as a secondary nation. Like those are the two problems that both nations have had for so long, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I think US just keeps getting every single set. There's like the mandatory Timmy US elite. It's like US just gets one less elite every nation than other main nations, because every set has just like, oh, the professionals. Okay, great. What deck am I going to play the professionals in? Oh, Sykes regulars. How am I ever going to play that, or the American Guard?
and it's always an
Or
infantry
the
too.
big red one. Like, what on earth am I doing with big red one? And that's on top of like, oh, they already have Pershing and Super Fortress. And also the B17F, but I don't think that one's staying in Classic. It's just like they have so many big cards that don't do anything other than be big. Like it's really frustrating because you only need like one or two really good late game cards. If you look at Germany, like they just always ran Leopold, and then either they ran the Tiger 1H, and then later down the line they ran King Titan. Like those were just the two big things they played. In Soviets it's a bit different because you have a number of good elites. But like Britain right now, it's you play the 7/7 Blitz Fury that puts the thing on the top of the deck. That's like the one late game unit you really need because it's just really efficient and it can end the game on its own if it doesn't get answered. Like the US doesn't need more big cards that do cool stuff if you have lots of credits. They have plenty of those. It needs things that let them get there. Which does bring me to one thing I want to mention, like the one highlight for US this expansion. And highlight is certainly one way of putting it, is the 5th Ohio. I don't know if you guys have seen this card a lot.
Yeah.
It's a US Elite, so you have to see US to see it, unfortunately. But 5th Ohio is... I absolutely hate it because it's the issue that Soviets had for a very, very long time, and we were just starting to get past it with Soviets, and I hope this isn't a new trend for US, where 5th Ohio is such a bonkers card. Like, this card is so ludicrously powerful just by itself, and it's a card that it's like the old Audacity, where I'm confident if you looked at the stats, the win rate of if you play Audacity on turn 3 versus you don't have Audacity in hand on turn 3, it's probably like a 15% win rate swing. I'm sure
At
that's
least,
the same with...
at least.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the same with 5th Ohio. If you play 5th Ohio on turn 3, your win rate shoots up like 20%. I'm confident in this. And I just don't like elites like that. Like, it's fine if it's like, oh, it's a 9-cost elite that if you play on, like, front formation, if you play it on turn 9. But it's like, okay, you have ways of cycling through your deck to get there. You can try to keep it in your mulligan if you want to be risky. But, like, 5th Ohio is just like, it's turn 3. It's basically just luck of the draw off the mulligan. There's not a whole lot you could do to increase your chances of having it in your hand on turn 3. And if you have it in your hand on turn 3, your win rate shoots up 20%. Like, I don't like designing cards that way. So it's like, it's not a big expensive Timmy elite, so that's nice, but like it's just another play on curve to win elite, which is less nice.
Yeah, I mean, this is almost a problem with like the game. Like I feel like you're saying that this is like a Russia specific problem or like a this card specific problem. I can think of so many cards that off the top of my head that are like exactly this, and they're all elites. I don't know. It's honestly even a card game problem to some extent. There's arguments for like flattening out the power level between cards, and there's arguments for not. And I'm somebody who likes a game with much flatter power bands, compared to there's other people who really like the flashy stuff, and it makes them have nice feelings, in their tummies or whatever. But that's just not me. But again, I think in my own growth as a card player, I've had to accept that like what I like isn't necessarily good for a game's longevity. Like I think that if everything is super finely tuned and like exactly equal in power level to each other, then like everything is viable and like, and that isn't necessarily great for somebody who's like trying to be onboarded. It's okay to have cards that suck. It's okay to have cards that are better. But yeah, I think recognizing our own, like, we are comp players at heart, and value narrow power bands and relatively equal power levels across all cards it's yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's something with I've recently like over the last year I've been playing more Hearthstone. And Hearthstone certainly has the issue of like the equivalent of elites in Hearthstone have crazy power levels sometimes. But the difference in Hearthstone is you can only run one like elite. It's the same in that sense. But in Hearthstone, the deck sizes are 30 rather than
39.
40 or 39 in cards. And there's also just every single class has really, really efficient access to draw. So the odds that you see like a 5-cost elite on turn 5 in a game of Hearthstone is about like 50-50. Whereas like the odds that you see a specific 5-cost elite on turn 5 in cards is like 20%. But like the power level of the cards are like about equivalent in terms of how good they are
I see
compared
what
to
you're
the rest
saying.
of the
Yeah.
field. So like that becomes an issue where it becomes easier to run. Right? It becomes easier for the game to fit higher swing cards if you see those swing cards much more often, or there are ways of seeing those swing cards much more often, rather than just being like, well, I mulliganed, I hope I see this card now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's some truth to that for sure. I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
I'm just looking at I pulled like I've had the cards collection page open this entire time, looking around at different things. I'm currently looking at just the all of the US cards from Oceania Storm. And it's like 5th Ohio, which is like an auto include in every single US deck for as long as that's in the game. And then like naval battles, fine, in a control deck. And like everything else is varying degrees of mid to bad. Like you got 1.5 playable elites and everything else is pretty trash for what was already a fairly, probably the most underplayed major nation, I would say. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. I wasn't playing a ton before Oceania Storm, but
I'd say
I'm trying to
since
remember.
Sherman stopped being good, and well, there's a case to be made for Brewster buffs with Garrison.
oh, that's true. Yeah, I did forget about
Yeah,
the yeah. I forgot about the Brewster stuff. I guess that was going on not too long ago. But like since that,
that's such
I
a
don't know.
specific archetype within the larger pool of U.S. cards. Like, what is
Yeah.
Brewster's? It's 9 cards out of the 300 that the U.S. has.
Here's a question that I don't have an answer to. I'm just throwing it out genuinely, but not counting Brewsters, what was the next time, the previous time that the U.S. got a U.S. archetype support in an expansion that was good? Like not even like tier 1, but like tier 2.
Sherman's?
I'm actually gonna
Throp and
go
Sherman's?
look for a second. So they tried to have the like buff your deck thing in Homefront, which did not go very well. In Naval Warfare, they had Brewsters, and Brewsters was pretty solid. In Blood and Iron, they had Shermans, and you made Shermans work. You did a pretty good job at making Shermans work. Although they
I,
weren't like, I don't
I
know if they were
think
tier 2, but they were probably like tier 2.5 or tier 3.
I think Sherman's worked entirely off of like their existence was entirely based on the Italian card that came out in the mini set afterwards.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if your archetype being viable is based on a card not in that nation that came out in a later expansion, I would consider that a failure. Like I'm
Okay.
talking like
Okay.
archetypes like in the set that they came out with. Um, was there anything
I
on
think
release that
there's
US had?
I think there's a case to be
Retribution was the
made.
last crazy one.
Oh yeah.
Retribution was Covert Ops, which was, I guess, like 2 years ago at this point. Yeah.
But like even with
Three?
Retribution, like Retribution offered you like by far the most value generation in the game, so like you could just play it and beat any control deck. But like it was never like a tier 1 deck because it just got stomped by Aggro, and there was nothing that really stopped that from happening. I do see what you're saying. The Retribution was viable, and I think you said Salt Throp. That's true, but that was heavily
mostly
pushed
better by the France cards that came
it was
way
French cards
later.
that came out later down the line, not the original American cards when those came out. So this is basically just what I'm trying to say is like basically every expansion, every nation usually gets one archetype that is pushed, and not all of those are going to be tier 1 or tier 2. Usually it's 2 of the 5. It just feels like the US has, like, outside of Brewsters, like in the last like 4 years of
sense.
expansions, when has a US archetype been tier 2 or tier 1 that was like pushed by the set?
Yeah, no, like as far as set specific mechanics, like keywords, they haven't had anything that was crazy so obviously when KARDS was first coming out, you didn't need to have archetypes, you know, and that's the beauty of the game in its early stages, is that you can just like make cards and people just put them together in ways that naturally work. And I really enjoy small card pools for that reason, because you don't have to have like explicit synergies. Obviously I understand why from many different perspectives. There's so many different reasons why like having these like defined archetypes is good for a game. But yeah, literally since they have started making, okay, like this expansion, this nation is going to get this, and this nation is going to get this, and their keywords or their like set specific mechanics. There has not been a single one that on release US actually used that was like any good. Other than maybe Retribution. I would say I would maybe fight you on Retribution.
They certainly, and before people in the comments start being like, well, actually, there's US has gotten good cards on release.
For sure. Oh yeah.
Like in Winter War, they got Production Order, which had to be nerfed several times. Devil's Brigade got nerfed.
Devil's Brigade was insane. Production Order was even more. Production Order was game warpingly broken for like a very long time.
Yeah, and then like they got Supply Priorities in M10 and Duras, which have all seen varying degrees of play. But none of those are like a combined synergy. Like the synergy in Winter Warfare was Throp. You had Le Terrible, the Engineers Battalion that gains credits with 3-operation. Production Order was meant to be a 3-operation card. And you had Victory March. And like the Production Order, which was just broken, and you played it without any of the actual Throp stuff. So it wasn't like the archetype was pushed, you just released a broken card. So the US has received good cards, do not get me wrong. But it's just they have not received a cohesive like package. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be nice for US to have a theme other than ramp. Because like Retribution was just like you throw it in ramp. Throp was just kind of throw it in ramp. Like I don't know. It'd be nice to have something like actually different. Like with
I agree.
Everybody has like the operation cost theme, and like that's just something they pulled out of the blue that did not exist prior to this, and you can run it in a variety of different ways.
None of which are good, as we've established.
Well, yes. I guess like the deck buff stuff was kind of new. I mean, it's you play it in frontline for the most part, but at least giving frontline something is something that they hadn't done in several years.
Yeah, I would argue though that if you're gonna make an archetype, sorry, I'll let you get in here in 2 seconds. I would argue though, if you're gonna make an archetype, that you should have it at least somewhat in line with the things that your nation is based around. Like, it would be nice to have some things that don't have to do with ramp at the same time though, like that's what US has. That's what it has access to. And so like making sure that it actually plays nice with the cards that already exist for it is important. But I agree that like the one thing that I think was pretty cool though was US Navy. US Japan Navy was not necessarily more for US than Japan, but US Japan Navy was really cool. Yeah, Saul, what were you gonna say?
I would like to take us a little bit further down on the cards iceberg and talk about something that I don't think anybody has thought about, probably ever, and that's the CC archetype that they've been trying to push for the last 4 expansions with the Finnish cards they've been releasing.
Yeah, yeah.
What gives?
I mean, I can't explain why they like picked this hill for Finland to die on.
I think that it's so funny that you say that because that was before those words left your mouth. That was the exact phrasing that I was going to use. I'm like, why did they choose this to be the hill to die on? Oh my gosh!
Like, I mean, Finland has been in the game for not that long, and they got like over the course of the game, they've gotten like 3 archetypes, broadly speaking. You have the sissies, you have discard, and you have salvage. And salvage, they decided to just delete as a keyword, so that had to be removed. And discard is notoriously not particularly fun. So that left them with the choice of push sissy continuously or create a new archetype. And as we were discussing with the US, they seem to find it difficult to create archetypes, especially with just the way the Allied Nations are set up, where they're only getting like 2 cards per expansion.
Yeah,
it's really difficult to create a new sort of archetype with that. And that's why I hope we get a mini set like United Front sometime in the near future, where United Front just gave like a ton of cards for the minor nations that allowed those to get pushed more. And in United Front, Finland got a lot of discard stuff and the self-discard stuff, and that was interesting. It'd be cool if they got more cards that worked around that, or got new cards for new archetype, but in a set that allowed them to get a new archetype off the ground at once.
They got 2 new cards, literally 2 new cards this expansion. That's just not enough to make major changes to like the identity or what it does, and if the existing ones don't work, then it is what it is, you know.
I will say the 2 new cards they got this expansion are both like insanely powerful. It's just an issue of they are insanely powerful in a very specific way, and they require picking Finland. Like it's you have to build your deck around it to run Sissy, or as like a package, as your win condition. Like there's some of the Sissy cards are just fine, but then why are you picking Finland? And not just doing other stuff. And then it just becomes, okay, well, the sissies have to be your win con, your deck's built around it, and it has to be powerful enough to compete with the win cons of all of the major nations. And that's rather difficult. But like the 2 Finnish cards that, the 2 sissy cards that they received this set are both really, really powerful, and I would highly recommend anybody check it out at some point. Maybe if Weather gets nerfed and Meteor gets nerfed, that can have some impact on the meta, because they're both insane. But yeah, I don't know. It's also just one of those things where, like, if you could run 20 Finnish cards in a deck, it would be a lot easier to build a sissy deck than running 12, because a lot of them are standards. And it's like kind of just want to run max copies of it, or a way to generate sissies with another, like a major nation to tie it together, but they're probably never going to do that. Yeah, I don't know. That's my thoughts on sissies.
You guys have any closing thoughts or things you want to talk about right before we end this? All right.
I'll throw out. I mean, Finland's getting weird stuff and is sort of falling off the map. France and Italy. We see more French and Italian allied decks around, so I think we think about it less. But none of their new stuff has been at all useful. They're really riding the high of stuff that is either evergreen for their nations or are going to be rotated out next year. So I think it's worth drawing attention to that. I'm not even going to address Poland. We all know Poland's bad and they don't care about them. But yeah, like, I don't know. The 2 French cards they got this expansion both suck and out for an archetype that doesn't exist and will never exist. And the 2 Italian cards are for an even worse archetype somehow that will also never exist and has even less support than the French archetype. Like honestly, Sissies is the most defined archetype out of like if you just look at the cards they received for this set. I think Sissies is the most defined archetype out of the 4 minor nations. Or 5 minor nations now, I suppose, but
I will say I find it a little bit ironic that the special that the French got was Chasing Shadows, except that it cost an extra credit, only affects your cards, and like it has like less utility. It's yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it could be useful in some combo, but I don't know why they're choosing now to try and recreate this archetype when like all of these cards already existed and are no longer in the active pool. Why are we like making them again? Like we
especially for
I
the
don't know.
minor nations where you're getting 2 cards in a set that need to push a reason to pick this nation as an ally over any of the other nations in the game, and this is what they got in.
I remember what I was gonna say. So something that I think I find really disappointing is the natural consequences of this new rotation system with the minor nation cards. If every set the minor nation cards get 2 cards, so for Oceania Storm they got 2 cards, for Homefront they got 4 cards, for Naval Warfare they got 4 cards, for Blood and Iron they got a supplemental set, so that doesn't really count. For Covert Operations, they got 2 cards. For Winter War, I don't think they got any cards unless you were Finland. Or maybe they were rotated out now.
Yeah, they're all
Regardless, okay. Like I know. Sorry, I was looking at the active pool, so maybe they got like one extra card or somewhere in there. But regardless, if you're only getting like 3-ish, let's say on average 3 cards per set. And what is the rotation cycle? Every 2 years?
Yeah. So that's
Okay, so that means that you're going to have at any given time like roughly 12 cards
yeah,
that
9
are
to 12
not
cards.
that are not in the permanent pool. That's like not workable from a creativity like you cannot create archetypes with 9 to 12 creating an archetype requires several years in advance of planning, and if you make even a single misstep, whoops, your archetype is just completely unplayable. Like you have no room for error in that. Especially if they're using this rotation mechanic as a way to naturally get rid of problematic cards over time, or naturally rebalance cards over time, right? Which like is a good thing if you're trying to set up sustainability and also predictability from your players' standpoint. You know, knowing when the annoying cards are going to be gone, all of that good stuff. But like you cannot actually do anything with minor nations if they're getting that few cards every expansion. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't seem like a good idea. And so for some nations, their core cards are already very good. Like France having access to Call of the Colonies and what is it? Libération? Is that the 3-cost one? What's the 3-cost? Gain 6 makes them. Is that Libération?
Oh yeah.
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 Like those cards are just good cards, and so like that will be able to form a solid control core forever, or until they get power crept out. But it's never going to change. France isn't ever going to do anything other than play their stupid resistance cards. They're going to play their arming their resistance. They're going to play their liberation. They're going to play the Call of the Colonies, and they're going to play maybe some Vive la Résistance and maybe like a Sabotage. I can tell you exactly what cards every French control deck. I can give you the exact list of cards that every French control deck will play for the next 4 years, and I can give you the list of with maximum 3 errors. Like I can give you card for card every single French package for the next 4 years with like maximum 3 cards difference, and I can tell you basically the same thing for aggro, and that's just lame. Like that's just not that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's also I mean, I think with the way minor nations work in the rotation system, you can really only do one of 2 things if you want to have any impact. one is the cards that they get directly support a existing archetype that is heavily pushed for a major nation, so that it creates an incentive to pick them as a minor nation to run these cards that support that archetype.
Mhm.
But that only works as so far as the power of that archetype is, and the issue with it, basically every time cards is trying to push an archetype is actually the best way to play it is not leaning fully into the archetype, but just taking the most powerful cards of it and then running it in the core of good other cards, which usually does not lend itself to picking a minor nation for one or two specific cards. The other thing you could do is just make the cards that they get absolutely busted, and to just try to brute force people into picking that nation just to run whatever insanely powerful standalone card they got for that set. But obviously, that's just not a particularly interesting way of doing anything. Brute forcing people to pick a nation by giving it broken stuff. And I mean, that's kind of what they're trying to do with Poland right now. Like, Anders' army is one of the best cards in the game, and Poland has nothing else to incentivize picking them.
People would be screaming about Anders' army if it was for any other nation.
That is true. Like, literally, I have a number of Polish allied decks in my on my account right now, and every single one is just for Anders' army, no other Polish card, because it's playing control, playing aggro, playing midrange, nothing. You look at every single card Poland has in the active pool right now, and it's Anders' army is incredible. That's why I picked Poland. Every single card Poland has does not make it worth it picking it, even if Poland's already the ally. I'm not incentivized to pick any other Polish card.
All right, can I wrap this back around to Finland real quick?
Sure.
So I think that the more that I'm thinking about these issues, the more that I'm realizing that one of the biggest problems with Finland is that you were saying, okay, so what if the minor nations support major nation archetypes? Mm-hmm. But the reverse is also true. How do the major nations actually affect the minor nation archetypes? And I think that resistance is a good standalone archetype because it also you can kind of throw it in whatever as long as the cards are on rate. And B is it supplements itself with a really strong healing engine, and as well as some draw. And so that's just a really nice thing for control to have. It creates an inevitability win con with control. They will eventually take 10 damage. It might take 20 turns, but eventually they're going to take 10 damage from these cards, right? But the problem with Finland is okay, so you have their archetype is clearly supposed to be CC, and if it is, how do the major nations play with that? How do you only have 12 Finland slots, so what are you supposed to do to make CC good? You could change some of the way that a lot of the Russian token stuff works to make it I don't know exactly how you could make it added units, so anything that's generated or created, but I don't know, or you could make some kind of spawnable only, make some designation that a card is spawnable only, make it visually clear, and then have spawnable only cards get buffed, or I don't know. There's ways to go about it, but how are you gonna make
a token CC deck sounds infinitely better than whatever is floating around in 1939's head.
Yeah, so I just I don't know how we're supposed to play the CCs if you only get 12 cards for it, and then you have to be doing a completely alternate you're almost in parallel game plans. I have this whole game plan over here, but then I also have to come up with some alternative game plan that my main nation is doing, and it's how does that work?
I'm honestly, I do wonder if if at one point in the future they might consider making the ally nations able to run more cards as an ally nation than the major nations as an ally. Keep the current limits. If you're picking, U.S. ally, you can only run 12 U.S. cards. But if you're picking Finnish ally, you can run 16 Finnish cards because it's an ally-only nation. And I don't know if that's going to help. Maybe that just makes people pick France more, and then you just run the 16 best French control cards instead of the 12 best French control cards, and nothing else changes. I don't know. You kind of need bigger pools for the ally nations for that to be worth it. But
I feel like I like that idea a lot, but at a certain point, um, if they do go down that route, it might have to be a situation where there's minor major nations and minor nations. Like like there's a distinction between how many cards that Anzac and Finland and Poland can run compared to France and Italy, and or anything else.
yeah,
How about this? How about this? What it? I mean, I could see a world where they're setting up to have because now we have 5 majors and 5 minors. Could there just be a set where you reverse how cards, like who gets what cards? So like give two of each. Each major nation gets 2 cards, and then all the minor nations get 1 billion, and then we just turn the minor nations into major nations. Like I know that sounds crazy, but like I could see a world where they do that. Especially now we have so many minor nations. Like either that or I don't know. I don't necessarily know if it's a good idea, but it's an idea that they could do. The other thing is, or just kind of like accept that where the minor nations are at is okay, which is they are interesting to a new player or to a player that really just likes these minor nations and likes the really heavy aesthetic and theme of what they do. Like they have very clear aesthetics and very clear themes, and like that's cool. And just accept that like they're not necessarily going to be competitive most of the time, and they aren't going to be getting new cards a lot of the time. I don't know. It's hard to say.
yeah. I know that. I mean, I know you were leading us to wrap up. So if that is the direction we're headed, I do want to throw one thing out there. Looking at Oceania front, because that is where we started. I know we've gone in a lot of different places since then, but looking at Oceania front, or that's not even the name of the set, Oceania Storm. We've spent a lot of time being fairly critical of this set, critical of where the meta is right now, critical of the design as a whole. I don't want that to be taken away as, at least for me speaking, I can't speak for you guys. I'm not unhappy with where the game is right now. I'm not unhappy with this set by any means. To me, Oceania Storm is the best expansion on release that they have had and the best time I have had with cards. Not necessarily playing the game, but just looking at the set as a whole since Legions, I would say. I think, like, to me, there was the first 3 major expansions, Allegiance, Breakthrough, and Legions. Those were really solid. And then it's kind of just been like a downhill, mostly bumpy roller coaster. Since then, to me, Oceania Storm is, it's got its issues, certainly. But I think the theming was on point. I think just thematically is very, very interesting. I think Anzac as a minor nation introduction is by far the most successful minor nation introduction we've ever had in cards.
1000%. Yeah.
Maybe too successful, but I'm sure we'll get a balance patch. I think that this is undeniably an incredibly power crept expansion. This is not a Brothers in Arms situation where most of the new cards suck. But unlike a Winter War or a Blood and Iron situation, it's power crept pretty evenly across the board, where it feels like every nation has unfair things to do. And obviously, you're always going to have the most unfair thing to do in the meta, and those are your tier 1 decks. But it felt like there was a lot of successful decks to build and to find with this set, and it didn't feel like they were too forced with just, oh, run all of these cards. There was stuff to explore, and I think there's still stuff to explore, especially if weather gets nerfed. I think people are going to obviously play some decks that exist now that don't get touched or don't get touched as much, but I think there's a lot of decks to find existing with the cards now without needing any buffs. I think there's stuff like maybe Poland allied Anders Army Aggro with more unit-based stuff. All in all, I think that this is an incredibly successful release. I like this if this is the new standard moving forward. for what an expansion release looks like in cards, I am very, very happy because I think the last few sets and really the last like 3 or 4 years of expansions have been pretty mid.
I agree. I think that this is by far the most fun expansion on release. The fact that it doesn't have any like glaring power issues. As you said, it can be in either direction. And Brothers in Arms, for example, is in that none of the cards are strong enough, or not many of them. I think that I think that there is greater room for getting to try all the different things in this set than there has been with basically all the other sets. And that's what people want to do when the new set releases, is like get to try all the stuff and not have this like giant behemoth of a tier 0 deck that's just like dominating everything and ruining the game. So like just to name a couple, in Winter War we had like Push that was just constantly over your head, and if your deck couldn't deal with it, it was like an issue. Covert Operations.
Solitaire deck?
Yeah, like a solitaire deck. Covert Operations had SKD at the very beginning, which then ate some nerfs, and then the German US deck became really broken.
Yeah,
and SKD like was fun for a couple days or like a week maybe, but when everybody is on it all the time, it is a very complicated deck. It's super not beginner friendly. It's the fact that like if you are not doing the fact that you can very easily time out if you're not like super time, you don't even have time to think about it. You have to be like on autopilot to like just get through the turn. And it's an OTK deck, so again, not super fun. Blood and Iron, none of the cards in Blood and Iron are particularly offensive until you remember that in Blood and Iron they basically reworked Commando Raid to be unbelievably broken, and for a week we had Reichsbank Commandos be by far like I think the stats on it were that it was like somewhere between 60 and 80% play rate at like Field Marshal. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. And to be clear, at that point I was not in internal testing, so I'm not spoiling any. At that point I was no longer in internal testing, so I'm not sharing any NDA information. Naval Warfare was pretty good. Naval Warfare is pretty good. There was some definitely more strong decks like Juffle, and like the Legion's deck was really good for a second, and the Brewster's deck was like very strong and needed some rework. So Naval Warfare, like there were some slightly problematic cards, but it was generally good. And then
I sorry to interject. With Naval Warfare, some notable cards that stand out to me: pre-nerf Colm, pre-nerf Rush, pre-nerf.
Oh right.
Pre-double nerf buffs.
Buffs. Yeah. You're right. You're right.
Also, just
all
of the naval burn stuff, and they removed most of the healing in the game, so just like every game ended by turn 10.
No. Turn 10 is generous for the most part, but yeah, Bismarck like ended every game no matter what. Yeah. Okay. No. See, this is why it's helpful to have somebody else there to like check you, because sometimes your memory is spotty. But like, basically every expansion has been like plagued by pretty serious problems on release. Oh, you know what Homefront was? Homefront had problems with 116th, right? Or was that Naval Warfare? No, yeah, 106 in Homefront, where you had the 1-2. It was like a 1-2 or 1-3 for 1 with 0 operation cost. Yeah, I mean, like basically, we haven't gotten to enjoy a set without having like a glaring power issue in a very long time, and so it's really refreshing that like. Yeah, there are definitely some stronger decks of Oceania Storm, but as we've seen, like people are finding counterplay pretty readily, and it seems like the meta is going to continue to evolve in ways that are going to be interesting. Like, I think that Oceania Storm has obviously you can't explore like every card and every archetype. No, it's not like every new card is viable, because that's never the case. Like, it's never going to be that every new card is viable. But I 100% agree with Jking that this one has been so much more successful than in the past.
Maybe the next tier 0 deck is going to be a CC deck. You never know.
True. Maybe. I just want to mention the comparison to covert operations, because covert operations is what introduced develop. And I think it's easy to look at weather and be like, oh, well, weather's just retooled retribution, retooled develop, it's the same stuff. I genuinely, I don't particularly care about weather. I don't hate weather as a mechanic at all. It needs to be balanced.
I agree.
But I don't mind playing against weather whatsoever, because
I agree.
There's a fixed pool, there's a fixed number of cards to generate, there's no retribution where they can generate more weather cards with their weather cards, there's a fixed amount of it. And you can just play around it. You have some idea of which one they picked based on which, if they picked Sunny, Rain, or Storm, when they picked it, what was the situation, which cards would they be leaning towards. It gives you some counterplay. And unlike Blitz Doctrine, it's not a permanent buff for the rest of the game that requires a specific nation to play, so you only see that nation and you just get absolutely rolled over by large tanks for the rest of the game. It's a single time effect card that, outside of the one rain card, are fairly contained in its power level. So it allows you to have more choice, but it's the fact that you can forecast in most nations. There's a number of different nations you can run to forecast. There's no infinite generation. There's no game warping, win condition creating effect from that. So just because it's pick one of 3 effects of value generation does not mean it is the same as other developed cards we've had in the past. I think Naval Warfare, Covert Operations is the set that introduced develop, is from a design perspective so much worse than weather. Weather is fine. Weather is an absolutely fine mechanic that just needs to be tuned up a little bit.
Yeah, we have basically all of the same controversial opinions. Dingo, weather, yeah, we're pretty much on the same page.
Except for Salt, who wants Dingo deleted.
Yeah.
Anyway, that has been a very long closing statement. Thank you guys very much. And before we end this, I have to ambush you guys with a deck list.
Okay.
I think that this deck is going to be the future of cards. Not just in this meta, but forever.
Elaborate.
So, first of all, it is an American main German deck, okay, with healing and guards, which means that it gets all of and it has board clear, as healing, guards, and board clear in 2 nations that have traditionally had very poor amounts of those, along with all of the strong American cards, in a very interesting anti-meta package with Jaeger Regiment and Wirbelwind.
I think that you should edit whatever I say to be I think this is the best deck ever made. This deck is gonna demolish her. Just dub it over and I can be swearing and be this is I think this is the best deck ever made. I love this,
Sorry, approved.
So when you say this is the future of cards, do you mean the idea of it more abstractly, nation identities are going to blend and it's just going to be becoming run the highest value cards, or do you mean this specific deck is going to be the future meta?
The funny answer is the second answer, but I think it is really a statement to how cards is developed. This deck only has 10 orders, I'm pretty sure, 10 or 11. Cards has been getting pretty low to the ground in terms of orders, when traditionally it's been almost 50-50 in a lot of control and mid-range decks. And I think it's a good direction to be going more towards a unit combat and effects on the board and conditional removals and archetypes. I think it's a very good direction. And I think Jking had a really great sentiment about how happy generally he is with Oceania Storm. I think it's a very good point.
Yeah.
I think right now Something you could not do with covert operations. When covert operations came out, if you were not playing Blitz Doctrine, you could not do anything other than aggro. If you do, or heavy ramp with Bomber Mafia. That was the other developed card forgot to think of
Bomber
before.
Mafia.
And then, like, in naval warfare, if, again, there was not enough healing in the world to consistently be able to out-heal the burn deck, so you couldn't do anything. But, like, right now, you can play a control deck with 0 forecast. Like, you have 0 weather cards in your entire control deck. You just play a control deck, you throw in the value stuff, you can pick a different miner. You can pick almost any nation to be your miner and pick whatever cool cards they have. And, like, you're gonna be fine. Like, you're not going to get absolutely rolled. Like, you're not going to have a great win rate if you're not picking something that's, like, you know, more defined in the meta. But, like, you're going to have, like, a 45% win rate with anything you want, as long as it's, like, fairly well built, using value cards of different nations. And that can... I think control is the easiest thing to do that with, but you can also do that with midrange, which is more like what this deck is, that you just shared, Salt, or... it's a lot harder with aggro, but I think you can still do that with aggro to some extent. And you could get like a 45% win rate right now, without any of the power cards that people are complaining about with Oceania Storm. And that's just something you could not do whatsoever. You'd have like a 20% win rate trying to do this in a lot of the previous sets.
Yeah, as I said, like, you can, kind of the same thing that I was saying, like, you can pretty much slap 2 nations together and, like, not have an absolutely miserable time. You know, you can do what you want to do. It doesn't mean you're gonna, like, top ladder with it, but you can do what you want to do with this set, which hasn't been really a thing since Brothers in Arms. And Brothers in Arms, the only reason why you could do that was because, like, all the cards sucked.
The power level was so low.
So yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that this deck is going to win a tournament anymore, but I wouldn't be surprised if you'd pull out a 50% or even higher win rate with some good play. And I could say that about most decks, you know, that are well constructed.
I've played maybe 35, 40 matches with this deck. It's gotten me a solid 60% win rate.
All right.
Is this the one that you tested against me?
Yeah, and it lost instantly.
Okay, it lost every game. Yeah, okay. I just want to. Yeah. We played like 5 games, and you went first in every single one, and I won every single one, and I was on aggro.
Actually, okay, that's not the right one. We only played 1 game with this deck. That was the ramp list.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, you said that this deck was to hard counter Japan Anzac aggro.
That's right.
And then immediately went first against Japan Anzac aggro and, like, lost to it. Okay, yeah.
To be fair, not everyone is Starry. Is skill equivalent or playing Starry's list specifically.
Absolutely, so, absolutely.
Audience, don't take that with a grain of salt.
Okay, so it wins against bad players on suboptimal decks. Seems like it's
if it beats bad players on suboptimal decks, that's going to be a plus 50%.
Yeah. you really doubt it.
All right. Well,
thank you.
That was fun.
Thank you guys for having me, and I appreciate you coming on my show.
Yeah.
Whatever this is.
Drop a like and subscribe, guys.
Like and subscribe, guys.
Yeah,
all right. Hit that follow button, hit the bell icon, drop a comment in the description.
In the description. But yeah, no, seriously, guys, if you made it this far, you're probably already subscribed to Salt, but if you're not, you should subscribe to Salt. He's been putting out some cool videos since Oceania Storm dropped, I'm sure before that, but your thumbnails in particular are on point. Your thumbnail game is really showing me up. But yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm always happy to talk cards for an obnoxious amount of time.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much, and see y'all next time.
See ya.